Gotta go live. Hi, everyone. Glory to God in the highest on earth, peace to people of goodwill. My name's Kevin Gregg. Welcome to the show. This is a show that's about reflecting, refreshing, rebuilding, reinventing your life according to God's purpose. So glad to have you here with us. I've got a dear friend who's on the show with us today, Doug Riggle. Hello, Doug. Could you give people a brief introduction about who you are?
Sure. Boy, that changes every day who I am. So Doug Riggle, been a believer since my early 20s and love the Lord. During the day, I'm a change management consultant for my company. And in the evenings and weekends, I run a nonprofit. I write books. I write books with people, including Kevin. And love my church. And that's 90% of my life.
I think that's a pretty good encapsulation of what you've just done. I'm really happy to have Doug on the show. Just a brief, and for those of you that are visiting for the first time, welcome. I am going to tell you, if you're visiting, you're just going like, and you know Doug, you just go, what? Who is this guy? What is he? Who's he interviewing? Where is this guy? If you're not familiar with the show, I've been doing the show for over a year or so, and I have to these shows that I do between this and also Your Creative Journey, they sort of spawned out of COVID and lockdown and the pandemic stuff. I am broadcasting from my house, and depending on what's going on throughout the day, I have to shift my broadcasting locations. I am currently broadcasting from my son's room. So if you're brand new, like going, what's with all the King Kong and the Creature of the Black Lagoon stuff? What is this? It's because that's where I have to broadcast from. So anyway, there's a cool little thing that we get to share with people. The reason I wanted to bring Doug on, we're going to talk a little bit about his story. And Doug sort of mentioned it. Doug and I have been working on a book for the last year, which we'll get into a little bit of the details in just a second. But we've kind of developed, we definitely have developed this friendship and this rapport over the last year, which has been absolutely amazing. And oddly enough, because we talk about it with Patrick Quinn on the show, I met Doug through Upwork, man. Like, should we talk a little bit about this process? What the heck happened there?
Sure. Yeah. It was my first time using Upwork myself. And I've been working on a book in my brain. I've been doing drafts of it, parts of it for probably 7-8 years. Because people always ask me, like, you need to tell your story. I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe I do. And let me start on it. And I get so far and I get a brain blockage. And I get so far and I can't go further.
Yeah.
And finally, I'm like, I think like November or so, or October, I'm like, I got to do this. And I need some help. So I went to Upwork. I forget how I found out about them, but I went to Upwork and I interviewed like 7-8 people on this and talked to them about their experience and, what they would be doing, bringing to the table, and interviewed Kevin. You were one of them, and you were the best one. So it's like, part of it was just listening to how they approach things. Part of it was just guidance from the Lord saying, go with Kevin.
Yeah. And
so we started this process, and we were originally talking once a week. Now we're talking twice a week at least. And working out. We got the first draft done. I think when I was in Iowa in June, we got everything done, and now we're going back and making it better,
refining it. It's been a heck of an experience, man, because like, honestly, like meeting you and working with you on this project, like I talked about with you privately, but it's just been such a joy. I think that the connection here for me is, and Doug, I don't even know if you put it in your job description or not. Did you have anything about Christianity that was in the job description?
I think I did. Yes. Yeah, okay. That was important. I wanted someone who could at least relate on that level.
Yes, I think that was probably the thing for me, because again, as people who are familiar with the work that I've been doing over the last, year particularly, but it's like, I was really looking for something that's like, Lord, help me use my talents and my skills for you and for what you're trying to do. And that was just a thing, I think, like with connecting with the two of us. And again, like fellowshipping and and prayer. I mean, to give just people a little bit of a insight about what we do for our practice, when we remember it, for the most part, we launch our work sessions with prayers. We go into it, and it's been this collaborative thing that we've been doing online. Doug and I have not met physically in person yet. You know, he's out in Ohio, I'm in Los Angeles, but it's just like we've developed this friendship, which has just been beautiful. And you just like, you don't know, right? Like, I just think about like, what would the Apostle Paul be able to do if he had this technology, you know?
Oh, wow.
You know, it's kind of crazy. So the thing that I wanted to do was, number one, bring Doug on the show because I wanted to introduce him to the listeners. And by the way, if you have any questions or comments during the live stream, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll read them. Or if you have a question or something, respond to them. But the one thing I wanted to do here was to introduce people to Doug and talk a little bit about your story. I mean, obviously that's the main thing that we're covering in the book. We'll talk about what the title of the book is in just a little bit. But that's what we've been covering in this story. And I guess, Doug, I'm just going to ask you to give just sort of a brief encapsulation of some highlights and changing things that have happened for you. I'm going to give you the floor and then pepper you with questions as we go. So,
to me, the heart of the book is embracing life's challenges. And I didn't learn this from the beginning. Somewhere in my journey, my faith walk, I finally realized by facing things head on, I came out much better on the other side, much more, what's the word? Like the ability to process what I was going through and compartmentalize it in its right spot, give it to the Lord, and then turn around and use it to help someone else.
mm-hmm.
So, because people have asked me, it's like, what would you back and do different? I'm like, I love where the Lord has me today.
Yeah.
Even all the horrible stuff I've been through. And there's some things, they're not even in the book that I've been through and have dealt with in my life. I can't go back and change anything because it's made me who I am today. And I love where God's got me right now. And it's just been, my life has been an amazing journey, one that I would never have charted out, but God did. And he's given me opportunities to share.
You know, and even just you talking about that, we were talking about this a few weeks ago, but I'm constantly reminded of Joseph in the Old Testament in Genesis, right? Having been sold into slavery, having been imprisoned, have been wrongly accused of raping an Egyptian official's wife, having the opportunity to get out of jail and then somebody forgets about him for another several years, and ultimately ending up becoming the second in command in Egypt under Pharaoh, right? Because of the famine and everything they've had, because of Joseph's ability to interpret dreams. And one of those powerful verses, I'm not going to have it memorized, though I should, that happens towards the end of Genesis, is after Joseph has saved the Jewish people, have gotten them, to get through the famine because they've been able to get them out from where they are, get them over to Egypt so they'll be able to ride out the famine. And after Joseph's father dies, his brothers, basically his stepbrothers, they're freaking out. They're freaking out, like going, this is it. We've blown it. This is he was just waiting for our dad to die. And after our dads died, he is going to get back at us for what we did, because we set him on this path where he was torn away from his family. He was gone. He was sold into slavery. And Joseph says, he says to them, what you meant for evil, God meant for good, right? As much as we get these we can have terrible curveballs that are thrown at us, things that could absolutely turn our life upside down. And yet that God is walking through it and with us every step of the way. What are some of those things that point out to you that you'd like to share with our audience today? I think just to help guide a little bit, I'm gonna let you do it. I'm gonna let you do it because it's your story, for gosh sake.
I think thematically, there's one area facing death. And it's one, initially, I never faced death. I remember when my grandmother passed away, and we were actually just working on this section of the book. Um, for whatever reason, I didn't go to the funeral. I don't know if they thought I was too young, even though my younger cousins went. I didn't understand death. No one talked about it. And later in life, I had my mom or my dad who adopted me pass away. My son who I adopted pass away. My mother who adopted me pass away. And just being able to face those things and realize that life here is finite, but life with God is infinite. And I know where the three of them are today. And it's almost freeing, and it's important for me to talk about it. Yeah. I know especially after my son passed away, which was 2 weeks before Christmas, and we're sitting there Christmas morning, where all the family's together, and people are walking on eggshells around me, and no one's talking about Richie.
Yeah.
And it's the massive elephant in the room. So I started just talking about stories. I'm like, oh, Richie would have liked that. Yeah. Or here's what, I start remembering Dad too. Mom was still alive then. It's like, Dad would have loved that. He would have laughed at that. Right. And starting to tell stories to show everyone that it's okay. And there's something so powerful about storytelling, which I love. It's healing for me when I tell it, and it's healing for others when they hear it.
Yes.
And it's okay to talk about the bad things in life, not just death, but abuse and all the forms of that, or having a bad job or a bad boss. You got to talk about those things. Now, you don't want to dwell on them, but you got to talk about them.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I don't know if it's a North American thing. I'm sure that there's other cultures that deal with this. I know that there's other cultures that deal with this. But something particularly has happened over the last several decades where it's like, oh, no. We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. We put that aside, and we don't air our dirty laundry. Now, there's something to that. There's something to that phrase about airing the dirty laundry, which is correct, right? It's like there's ugliness and other stuff that happens, and human error that happens, that it's like you don't go out and I think that phrase is more about like not proclaiming and showing the wrong stuff that's going on with other people in your home, right? I think that's the intent about it. But I feel as if that has gotten misinterpreted into, we don't show that there's anything wrong at all, right? And it's like, and for me, Doug, it's so counterintuitive. It's so counter Christ's message, because I really feel like Christ's message is about like, where so many of these other faiths want you to be pristine and flawless and all of this before you approach your maker.
Yeah.
Christ is saying, you're not. Right. You're broken. You're messed up. But bring it to me. Come to the altar. Yeah. Come to me and bring it all over and just say, here you go. Here I am broken, and I can't heal myself without you.
Whenever I share my testimony with people, or just share, faith in general, I start with Romans 3:23. To me, that's the best level setting verse of the entire Bible. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. All, big capital letters, all. Every single one of us falls short.
Yeah.
And why do we put on this front that makes it look like everything's perfect? And I think we've all done this. I've been in church even. One of the pastors will walk up, hey, Doug, how you doing? Oh, doing great. How you doing? And mentally, I'm like, I just lied to a pastor. I just lied to my religious leader, because I'm not doing great. I'm horrible inside.
No.
But society wants us to put on this front. And if any place where we can be ourselves, should be ourselves, and be open and honest about what's going on in life, it's at church.
Yeah.
It's with the people we love.
Oh my gosh. It's a thing that I've discovered in my walk through recovery. I've talked about it here before on the show. I truly do believe, I feel like Celebrate Recovery, that there are parts that I have experienced in Celebrate Recovery that truly model what the church could be and rise to, right? Which is, we always describe it as welcome to the emergency room, right? Like, welcome to the place that you're coming in where you're absolutely broken and that you need that help in getting repaired. Now, to your point of what you said earlier, there's a fine line. right? There's a fine line between, and we've seen it with social media posts or all this other stuff. There's a fine line between recognizing, you know what? I'm broken, I'm hurt, and I need help, and I want to get better, right? I feel like it's all of those things combined. Whereas the other thing you're talking about is like, it's supposed to be a process of moving forward, of getting better, right? It's not just about, because we all know it, right? We've all seen it in our lives. The people have just gone, how are things? Oh, well, this is terrible and everything's and it seems like every time you talk to them,
Yeah.
it's always the laundry list of everything that's going wrong in their life, right? And maybe that's the reaction that happens in society, that people say, well, I don't want to be that person. And I can totally get that. That I can go, got it, no worries, you're right. I shouldn't be the person that's always complaining and never making any movement forward. But there is something about admitting when you need help, when you're hurting, when you're broken, and it's just saying, I want to get better.
Right.
I want to get better. So
well, it's admitting that, for me at least, the healing process is never done. Once the hurt has been inflicted, it takes the rest of my life to heal from it. Now, it may be just not even a blip on my brain 10 years from now, but it's still there. And it's one of those things where I think we forget, Paul had the thorn in his side.
mm-hmm.
When you realize it's there, it's going to be there, it makes it much easier to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
I found.
Yeah.
When I try to push it down, because trust me, I went for years, I just stuffed everything, because that's the way I grew up. No one was allowed to be emotional in my family. Dad was the only one who was allowed to express anger. I wasn't ever allowed to. And so I learned to stuff everything and not address it. And I remember it took a good long time of counseling with a really good friend of mine, Brian, wonderful Christian counselor here in Columbus. One day I walked in, I'm like, I can't stop crying. I can't turn off the waterworks. What have you done to me? And it's opened up floodgate of everything that I've pushed down.
Yeah.
And now I learned to take it as it comes. And I will even go, like, if I've gone a week and I haven't shed a tear for something, I'll purposely go do that, because even that physical act of crying is cathartic. It changes you inside, and it keeps you in touch with the empathy and compassion that God gave us.
Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. Because I mean, it's even, he models it, right? Like God models it for us.
Yeah.
He mourns us. He weeps for us, right? He longs for us. He has all that. Jesus wept, right?
Yeah.
Jesus looked at Jerusalem and he wept for Jerusalem, right? That passionate love or that sorrow that can be there. It's an extension of God, right? It's an extension of God. I had a priest once who told me that, like, tears are gifts from God. That's what he said. And it is, because there's this moment of it where it feels like stuff is flowing out. And it does. It triggers like a physical release where you just go, oh, God, I needed that. I just needed that. I had so much stuff that was pent up. And again, a stronger point of what we had talked about earlier as we were in the beginning stages of this, particularly for men.
Yes.
This is a hard thing for them.
It's very hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And just trying to figure out to just try to model, because there are a lot of guys that were, and again, fine line, isn't it? Right. Because we're not saying, yeah, be a blubbery mess and let your emotions completely dictate how you feel. Well, that's not what it's called to be a man either. But you can be a man who is strong and seeking wisdom and trying to grow, but that you can also experience suffering and that you don't have to. Again, it's the inverse version of, it's the negative side of stoicism, right? There's something to be said about stoicism of, yes, there are times where you have to be strong, silent, right? I've had this so many times. How many times have I had, my wife, Kate, will call me up with like something major that's going on with the car, right? Oh my gosh, man, I'm just going to share this story. Oh, I'm going to share this story. She's going to hate that I share this story. Duncan, who has autism, when he was like in his mid-teens, I'd probably say 14 or 15. So my son's on the moderate to severe side of the spectrum. So it's like verbalization's not great, like communication stuff. If you look at him normally, like it looks like he's fine. Anyway, I was working down at Disneyland. That's where I worked as a performer. And as a performer, you would get to have people come in. You'd be able to get people into the park. And so I'd use it with the family on a regular basis. So Kate could bring Duncan down. He enjoyed the parks all the time. I received a blood-curdling call from Kate while I'm at work in the middle of shows, doing cowboy shows. And she is crying on the phone, like, just it's Duncan. And I'm just like thinking, what's happened? Has he been killed? Has there been an accident or anything like that? And I had to kind of keep it together in that moment. Like you can't go the other side. The short version of that story was she had taken him to the restrooms. He had got, he was old enough where he's like basically she had sent him in, and she had looked away for a minute. And in that time frame, he had come in and out. And after she had asked a janitor to say, hey, could you do me a favor and make sure that my son is in here? He looks like he's wearing this and this. The janitor was looking at the wrong kid. He was describing the wrong kid, and Kate lost like 15 to 20 minutes of time where he was just like gone. And this was like towards the front of the park. Long story short, he had just gone like right around the corner to where there was a little coffee stand where we had just gone. He was sitting there. Somebody got him like a drink of water. Like he was just like sitting there, just having his drink of water. Security found him and everything. But in that moment, me as a man, right? This is an example of like going, you have to go, stop. There's nothing that's going to solve with me like flipping out or screaming or crying. What's going on? Right? It's just like, you got to keep it together. Now, that also doesn't mean that I become like an insensitive, incommunicative rock with people so that people can't even talk to me about their stuff, or that I'm telling people to just go deal with it. That's not what we're called to do either, right? It's a fine balance.
You don't stay married very long when you say deal with it.
No, not at all. Not at all. Couple of questions for you. So you had one of these things. I'd love to talk about this, and also to let you know, I'm going to adjust it in the show notes. Doug has done a TEDx talk, as a matter of fact, about part of his journey, about his son's passing and about some things that he experienced in his life. I'd love to share this part of your story, if you don't mind. This moment that you sort of had your conversion moment of realizing that Christ was real. Oh, yeah. And this happened because of a major incident that happened down in Texas years ago. Would you share that with our listeners?
Sure. I'll try to keep it brief. I'm always teaching people how to share their testimony. I'm like, you can say it quickly, you can say it briefly. So in college, I really was not anywhere near God. My girlfriend was. She was a Southern Baptist. We would have conversation night after night. I was talking about what they used to call the New Age side. Shirley MacLaine was big back then.
Right.
And all these books I was reading and all these things I was experiencing showed me that was true. It may have been true. It may not have been right. So that's a little caveat there. And then I was working, I managed a liquor store at Lackland Air Force Base at night. And I had done an internship with the American Red Cross, and they called me up saying, we don't have anyone who can go address this bus disaster in Comfort, Texas. And they're like, can you go up there this weekend, spend the weekend, help get the Red Cross? We're going to be there with some other people. Because I was the media liaison. And so I went up there not knowing what to expect when I got there. And when I got there, I was just overwhelmed. But I back then I was going to, I pushed it down. I didn't address anything I was feeling. But a bus had tried to cross a stream, which turned into a river, which knocked a bus and a van into the river. 8 or 9 kids were, all the kids had to escape the flood, adults as well. In the end, 9 kids died as a result of that. We were held up in a makeshift, this happened in July, so we were in a makeshift Red Cross, what's the word?
Like a tent, or not that, but like a
We're in the grade school there, just a shelter. We were in a Red
Sure.
Cross,
Yep,
they turned
yep.
the whole school into a shelter. The kids were walking around in robes. The water, I don't know if the power of water is scarily strong. I mean, the kids' clothes were just ripped from them when they were leaving the water. And then over time, I'm hearing stories, and I'm talking to the media. I had a room set up for the media where I would go find someone to interview, because before they were just jumping on, not jumping on the kids, but cornering the kids, scaring them. They've been through trauma. Parents were flying in from just outside of Dallas during this whole time as well. So I had the media over to one side in another room. I'd go talk with people and see who wanted to be interviewed, and would come and talk. And I'd give the media updates from time to time. And some of the stories there, and just the people I got to interact with, I was completely blown away. One of the young men, his name was John. He was a football player kind of guy. They were all there at a Christian Bible camp for the summer. And he had put his buddy who had broken his leg during the camp on his shoulders, carried him to safety. He ended up rescuing 2 more people, getting them to safety in trees, because this point, it was not a stream. It was just a very, very wide river where there was never a river before.
Yeah.
And he was gone. Never found him. One of the stories I remember, there was a woman sitting just in the shade, and I walked up to her, and I knew that she had lost both of her boys. Both of them had been found dead.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm with the Red Cross, because she was terrified of the media. I'm like, I'm with the Red Cross. Can I help you get back home? Is there something, can I do something? She's like, no. It's like, and she was so calm. And she's like, we're not leaving until our child's found.
Say it one more time, because you broke up. We're not leaving until.
We're not going to leave here until every child has been found.
Yeah.
And she had just lost her kids. Another young man, he had washed downstream quite a ways, held onto a log for dear life. And at some point, he was able to get his feet and his bearings. He realized because he couldn't see much, and realized at that point in time, he was holding onto the leg of a deer, and the deer had crawled towards shore and saved his life.
Wow.
And there are other stories there as well.
Yeah.
And the love that these people had for each other, and the love they had for God, as I start to learn more about them, they were all from the same church, is a love I had never seen before or experienced in my entire life. And my girlfriend had been sharing the gospel with me back in March of that year. This is probably a key point. I remember waking up, there was some telepreacher on the TV, I don't know who it was, and he was saying the same things that my girlfriend had said the night before. And college was a very depressing time for me. It was just a very dark time. Sorry, they're doing some lawn work today.
That's okay. As I always say, it must be incredibly important whenever there's distractions that pop up. Right. So you're okay. You're okay.
And so I were just at that moment in time, a quick prayer. It's like, God, if this is true, just show me.
Right.
And I forgot about that prayer.
Yeah.
And until this happened, on the way back home, I pulled over and I'm like, okay, this is real. I'm yours. I don't know where to begin, but I'm what I was doing before wasn't working. So I need to follow you.
I think it's that, right? Well, and actually there's one more follow-up thing that happens with that too, because you end up going to a church and then they end up talking about, yeah, go ahead, please.
So yeah, we went to church. Well, I moved, this was in Texas. I moved back to Ohio. This is in November, and a friend of mine who I went to school with, Carol, we've known each other since 3rd grade. I didn't know she was a Christian. She's like, hey, do you want to go with me to church? I'm like, sure. So I went with her to church. It was a Sunday evening service. And I get there and they're talking about Genesis. And they're going through that whole long section where someone begat someone and they live 1,000 years and they die. And so it just on and on, this genealogy of people. And then they got to Enoch.
Mhm.
Enoch walked with God and he was no more because God took him.
Mhm.
And that immediately took me back to John, the young man who saved 3 lives and God took him.
Yeah.
And different circumstances, but at the same time, it was one of those confirmations that God's saying, yes, this is where you need to be.
Mm. It's so powerful, right? It's honestly like, just as you were talking about that, it just reminded me of like, they will know we are Christians by our love. They will
Exactly.
know we are Christians by our love, because I think that I think that it's that example. Listen, man, it's one of the things that turned the Roman Empire upside down, right? It's one of the things that scares countries that are so anti-Christian about Christianity. Because when you think about, the early Christian church and Christians they went to their deaths because of their belief. And
Right.
it wasn't fighting. It wasn't anything that happened. Jesus was not the Davidic Messiah that the Jews were hoping for. The Jews wanted to have a Messiah that was going to come in and be a political and warrior and leader that way. That's what they thought it was going to be when their
Conquer the
savior
Romans.
was. Yeah. They
Yeah.
thought that's what it was going to be. Conquer the Romans, get these guys out of here. We're going to take it back with force and might. And how Jesus came and had something even greater than that, right? But and again, you point to, it's one of the miracles of the church, right? One of the miracles of the church is, I'm going to go off on a tangent for a second, but something happened, ladies and gentlemen, 2,000 years ago. Something happened. A group of people experienced a man that was here, that not only taught them and led them, but something happened that caused them to go, my life has changed. And that includes the resurrection. So they saw that. And Christ knew what he was doing with that moment, right? Because it was just to those people. Because people kind of say, well, why didn't it just happen for like the entire world? It wouldn't have mattered. We could have had it happen. Do we not see the stuff that happens with the Israelites, in Exodus, right? It's like they could get seas parted, they could get anything happen, and just they'll start grumbling about that they don't have, food or any of the stuff, right? It doesn't matter. The human heart always wants something else, but that we had something happened with this man, with this small group of people that saw him, and that those immediate witnesses were able to go and spread and to grow the church, so that then over the next 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 years, as Christians are getting persecuted and killed, that they're willing to go to their death because of the belief and the faith that they have in what they have heard and what they believe, right? And so that's the dangerous aspect of Christianity, right? And to the point of what you saw down there in Comfort, Texas, with these kids that get wiped out, with this massive tragedy that happens, and then you see the witness and the countenance of these people and going, what's going on? This doesn't make any sense at all, I'm going to touch on it briefly. If you want to find out the full story, you'll hear about this. We've talked about Richie's passing. Richie committed suicide. Richie committed suicide. How old was he?
22.
He was 22 years old. We don't have to go into all of the details of this, but what the heck? What got you through this, and what continues to get you through this? Because Rick Warren's dealt with this with his son Matthew, that there's so many other families that are out there that deal with this. What has gotten you through this?
The outpouring of love from my closest friends, people in the church, family, of course, too, but the people that I fellowship with, because I remember the Sunday after his funeral, I called Chris up. Chris is my pastor, a good friend of mine, love him dearly. And I said, I'm going to come to church, but I'm going to come in late, sit in the back row, because I don't know where else to be, but this is where I need to be. I just didn't want a bunch of people coming up to me. I'm like, I'm a bit of isolationist myself, so I'm an introvert. So I love people, but at the same time,
right. And
space.
People, unfortunately, going back to our earlier conversation, when it comes with death, like, people don't understand. They just don't say the right things. They may have the best intentions, but they just don't say the right things. They just don't.
Yeah. So yeah, being at church and then talking about it and talking with other people about his life, his suicide, sometimes how I'm doing. There were times when, so his birthday was August 6th, 1985. Just last Friday, one of my nieces reached out. Actually, it was why Kevin and I were having a conversation about the book, and she started saying things like, just wanted to let you know I love you. And at first I'm like, that's odd, what's going on? Then I remembered it was his birthday. And that day is, not less important, but it's in my brain, December 13th, the day he committed suicide. That's the day that always lives with me. But having people to talk with about it, it's the reason I did the TED Talk, the TEDx. I needed people to understand that it's okay to talk about death. And it's okay to talk about suicide. It's okay to talk about the fact that I'm not all right. You're not all right. People can, and through COVID, that's been one thing I've seen come out more. People are feeling more freer to say, I'm not doing okay.
Yeah.
But we're never going to deal with any sort of mental illness if we don't address it head on.
No.
Period.
No. Yeah, boy, it's one of the biggest challenges in the church, isn't it? I think it's one of the biggest challenges of trying to deal and do the outreach, especially with mental illness, because it can be scary. And not only mental illness with people that are suffering from continual depression or possible bipolar disorder, but also when we look into the outreach that happens with homeless, where we have a majority of homeless that are also dealing with mental issues, and just going, it's a big one to unpack, man. It's a big one to unpack.
And I tell people, you can't fix everyone's problems, but you can start with one. It's like when I made the decision to adopt, originally my plan was to adopt, because boys at that time were considered not adoptable if they were over age 8. So I'm like, okay, but I want to adopt someone who's getting closer, to being an adult and to make a difference in one life.
Which is so funny, just as a side, because you had happened to pop in on the other podcast I do, Your Creative Journey, with Thomas Schulteis, who was also talking about adopting kids that are, adopting boys that are older, right? Yeah. So crazy, those parallels.
It's a small world, plus Wizard of Oz,
plus Wizard of Oz.
That's a strange parallel.
That's it. I want to talk a little bit about Orphan World Relief with you. Yes. What is this to set you on this path to adopt?
So in the late 90s, I was doing some short-term missions work with my church, Chris and I, and some others in Kyiv, Ukraine. And I saw firsthand the issues that these kids were facing. I spent an entire day, it's kind of a dreary, rainy day, but we went to this park, Idro Park there in Kyiv. And I kicked the ball around. I don't play soccer. I kicked the ball around. And we were there with probably about 8 or 9 homeless boys. And a young man named Pasha, at the time, he got like $145 a month for an American couple. That paid for all his living expenses and allowed him to do outreach to these homeless boys. Mm-hmm. So I remember I was shared a little bit of my faith with them. I had a digital camera, which they, were fascinated by. They kept wanting to take a bunch of pictures, brought them some snacks, and the next day we were going to go visit an orphanage, a small group of us. We broke off. We went to go visit an orphanage, one that was recently set up, but it was very well run. So I went to see what a good orphanage looked like in the world. And we had passed under this bridge, and I kept hearing someone call my name. I'm like, I'm imagining things. I'm like, because my name is Doug. and someone saying "da" very loudly, yes, in Russian,
Yes,
Ukrainian. Right. I'm like, I'm just hearing things. And then finally I heard a little voice say, "Douglas." And I turned around, and the bridge we had just walked under, the homeless boys I had spent the day with the day before, had slept under the bridge that night. And they were so happy to see someone, not just orphans at the time were treated like second-class citizens.
Yeah.
And especially homeless boys barely even got any sort of indication from anyone that they existed. So we stopped and talked to them and hung out with them for a little bit. And we went on. But just the joy on their faces of seeing someone they knew, not only just someone, but an American, which was a very big thing for them. And they were just so overjoyed. And at that moment in time, God's like, you can't go back to the US and not do something to make a difference. And came back, I started, the adoption process. And then I also started thinking about something longer term to impact more. So I started coming up with the business plan for a new nonprofit ministry called Orphan World Relief, and gathered a small board together. Now, it took quite a few years. We didn't really launch it until 2008, and didn't get our 501c3 nonprofit status until 2011, right. Through a series of challenges that we faced. But yeah, that's really, God just laid it on my heart. It's like, you got to go back and do something.
Yeah.
And make a difference.
That's awesome, man.
It's been an amazing journey. I mean, we've been doing this since 2008. We've impacted thousands of kids' lives. Just focusing internationally. We had 3 nonprofits that we focused on programs, one in Ukraine, one in Bolivia, and one in St. Petersburg, Russia. Now we're at 7 international programs. We've got a program called My Comfy Kits, which provides backpacks to kids entering foster care for the first time. We're standing up a new program called Children First Family Services that will do adoption and foster care support within Ohio. And we're also looking at trying to start a new program called Foster to Adult, where we work with kids who are aging on the foster care system to give them some life skills. Love to work with churches to give them some mentorship, not just one-on-one mentorship, but family mentorship. Let them see what family's supposed to look like with all of its flaws, because the church has people who are flawed too.
That's right.
Trust me. and just help them through that adult stage, because the chances of them being homeless if have been in foster care is extremely high.
Yeah.
One stat I heard, 80% of people in prison have been in foster care. Now, I'm not going to say that there's a direct one-to-one correlation. Yeah. But those numbers are hard to ignore.
Wow. 80% of people that are in prison were in foster care. Okay.
Yeah. At one point or another.
Okay. Fascinating stuff, man. I mean, honestly, a huge call to action. Some of the stuff that Doug has been talking about, these are just snippets of the stuff that we've been working on for last year. We've been working on the book. The title of the book is called, go for it.
I'd Rather Be a Buffalo.
I'd Rather Be a Buffalo. What kind of crazy name is that? Where did you get that? Well, first of all, we've been working on this. We've been working on the book. And then one day, Doug sends me that title and I go, what is this? And this is amazing. Yeah. So tell the listeners where you got this title.
So it's one of those concepts I heard of while I was driving somewhere. Buffalo, when a storm comes up, you have cows and you have buffalo. Buffalo will head into the storm in order to get through it on the other side faster and to do better. Cows will just run along the storm looking for shelter and just get drenched.
Yep.
So it's that concept. I'd rather be a buffalo. I would rather head into the pain and the struggles of life and the storms of life head on to get through on the other side faster and stronger.
Yep. That's once Doug told me that title, I said, that is absolutely perfect. We have to keep that. Yeah. Regardless of whatever happens, publishing wise or whatever, right? It's almost like a non-negotiable. It's
exactly. This is the name of the book.
It has to be that, right? Because that idea of so many of us run away from the pain, the challenges, right? We're just like the cows. We're just like, oh, no, I want to go somewhere else. I want to go away from it. And instead, we end up getting drenched. The storm follows us, all this stuff. And there's something that happens with just going through it and getting on the other side, you know?
Well, and there's this growing mentality that I'm seeing, at least in the world, that pain is bad. And I'm going to ignore pain or avoid pain as much as I can. Even the words people say to each other. If you hurt me with your words, you can't say those words any longer. I'm like, pain is good. Pain shows us that there's something wrong inside.
Yeah.
Pain helps. I don't know. It just, there's so many great things that pain does for us. When you work out.
Yep.
If you're working out hard enough, your muscles are going to be sore.
That's right.
Because you've torn the muscle, but it builds up stronger muscle.
Yes. It's exactly that. This idea of being fully, I just want to be comfortable. I just don't want to get hurt. I just want to pursue happy. People forget this, right? The pursuit of happiness. It's not about like, I want to be happy all the time. I want to feel good all the time. No. It's the fact that we have the freedom to pursue that, the pursuit that happens. And that pursuit is the action and the pain and the struggle and the other things that go along. And I will tell you what, that makes the rewards that much sweeter. But we also don't hang out in comfort and goodness all the time, right? I was just describing this to somebody else the other day. It's like, I like birthday cake. Birthday cake's awesome. I can't have birthday cake every single day of the week, right? I can't have birthday cake every single meal of the day of the week. I'm going to get diabetes and die, right? It's like supposed to be these moments of going, oh, that's nice. That's a nice special little thing that I had. Great. What a nice moment. Now it's time to get on and to move to the other. And I think that that's it. We just want to flood ourselves with, I want comfort all the time. It's like, no, man, you're literally causing stagnation in your life. It's this constant flow. When things are flowing through, it's healthy. It's healthy for you. I love Dave Ramsey's example that he has with money. He always uses it with like, there's two ways you can deal with money. You can either hold on to it like this, or you can have it like this. And if you have it like this, yes, money's going to go out of your hand, but you're also allowing for other money to come in. If you're keeping your fist like this, sure, you'll hold on to what you got, but nothing can get in or out, and you're stuck, right? And it stagnates, right? And so I use that analogy with just like, that's what life is, right? Life is this continual flow. Now we can't have a thing where it's all, if it's all pain all the time. Okay, we got to address that. What's going on there? Are we continually putting ourselves into situations where we're exposing ourselves to pain, that maybe we're exposing ourselves to pain that we're not supposed to be burdening ourselves with? Maybe I love that stuff from the Boundaries book with what's his name? Henry Cloud and Townsend, right? But this idea of like, are you taking on somebody else's pain that they're supposed to be doing themselves to grow, right? So are you finding yourselves in if you're finding yourself in a constant cycle where you're never coming up for air and never having oxygen, it just feels like it's pain all the time. Well, that's a warning sign too. Yeah. But it's also not supposed to be like, oh, I'm just going to hang around and do nothing, and I don't want to have any hardship. You don't grow that way.
Yes, you don't grow.
You just don't. So here's the exciting thing that I want to share with our listeners. And the reason we've had Doug on here today is because this is the first of many times that you're going to see Doug on the show. Actually, based on us, because we're working on the book and getting it to manuscript form so that we're getting out there and God willing, getting a publisher and getting it out there. We're going to start doing I think we're going to be starting next week. We're going to start doing like a weekly Bible study that's based on the themes that we cover in I'd Rather Be a Buffalo. So, I mean, I don't know what we call it. I'd Rather Be a Buffalo Bible study. So, now, are you about to, now, you and I didn't talk. I see that you're looking at something. Are you about to share something or no?
No, I was just looking,
Okay.
keeping some verses in mind.
All right. Very good. Very good. So anyway, what we're going to be doing, ladies and gentlemen, over the next few weeks, or several weeks, I should say, you're going to see Doug and I popping up on a weekly basis as we do the I'd Rather Be a Buffalo Bible study, dealing with some of these issues that we've been talking about. So I'm looking forward to it, man. I think it's going to be a blast.
I am too. Let's just test drive some of the stuff that's going to be in the book.
Yes, no, absolutely. Because that's the ultimate point with this book. As we were talking, I was just talking about this last night in your creative journey as well. But it's the idea that this ain't for us. It ain't for us. It ain't for our glory. It's to help others. And it's to to use our skills and talents to be able to help other people that are going through seasons of pain. That's really what this is about, So super happy to be partnered with you on it, brother.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up the show?
Start thinking about what you're going through in life. If you're dealing with something right now, stop and take it and reflect what areas of this is stretching you, what could potentially be growing you for future. Because I will say, I've not lived my life in vain. Every single moment of pain I've been through, number one, I know in the future, Jesus is going to wipe away every tear. He's going to spend quite a few years on me just doing that. But at the same time, he's turned it all around for good. I've been able to minister to other people who have gone through something similar. And I never would have had, without those experiences, I never could speak into someone else's life with any degree of authority.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen, man. It is literally, it's walking the talk, right? It is walking the talk and just going, all right, I'm going through this. Here's how I'm sort of navigating it. Here's how I'm witnessing how I'm going through it and how God's helping me through it. So amen to that. Where's the best place that people can go to find out more about Orphan World Relief?
Very easy. orphanworldrelief.org. You can follow us too on social media. Most of it's Orphan World Guy, which is me.
Orphan World Guy. That's Doug. Or you can go to orphanworldrelief.org.
Yep.
Awesome. Do us a favor. Thank you so much for seeing the show today. If you like the show, could you please do me a favor? Hit subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you find out when we're having more shows on this channel. We've got the Kevin Gregg Show. We've got Your Creative Journey. Also, if there's something in this show that really resonated with you and you think, man, there's somebody else I know that would love to, they got to see this video. Could you please just copy the URL and share this video with them? Figure out a way that you can share this video with them so they can hear what's going on. And also, I get it. We had a lot of people that were watching and not as much comment stuff, but if there's stuff that really resonated with you in the show, leave comments in the comment section on this video. And believe me, Doug and I, we're on YouTube. We'll respond. We chat back and forth. We love hearing your comments that are in there and we'd love to respond. So please do that. As always, shameless plug, great ways to be able to support the show. You can always head over to kevingregg.locals.com. Doug is actually a member of kevingregg.locals.com. It's free to go over, but I've also got another series that's happening right now, which is called The Parameters for Working on a Project. So I think this week I'm about 6 episodes and I got another one's coming out, I think tomorrow. But please join over on Locals. It's a great way to be able to support the show for as little as $2 a month. You can help offset some of the costs that happen here to keep the show running and gunning to get it out to you. All right, Doug, that's all I got, man. What a blessing, brother. So grateful that I met you. So grateful that we're working and partnered together. And I can't wait to just continue on. That's for sure.
Love you, brother.
Love you too. All right, gang. I'm going to end it all. Doug, I'm going to end the show. I'm going to end the stream. I'm going to end the Zoom. Grateful for you, brother. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. God bless you. And we will see you next time. You'll see Doug with me next week as we continue our Bible study. All right. Love you, brother. God bless everybody. And we'll talk.